A rusty pickup truck sat stranded by the side of the road, its hood propped open like a weary traveler pausing for breath. The woman standing beside it looked just as frustrated as the old machine itself, brushing wind-blown strands of hair from her face as she waved for help. Graham Beckett, a struggling single father, wasn't in the habit of stopping for roadside strangers. But something about the scene tugged at him, the weariness in her stance, the quiet determination in her eyes. Against his better judgment, he pulled over. Fixing the truck was easy. Understanding the woman's secrets would prove much harder, because she wasn't just another traveler passing through. She carried with her the weight of a crumbling legacy, a vast farm on the brink of ruin, a name tied to history, and a past she had long tried to escape. What started as a simple act of kindness would soon unravel into something far greater. Graham had restarted her truck, but would he help her restart a life she wasn't sure she wanted? Sometimes fate works in mysterious ways. Sometimes the past finds you when you least expect it. And sometimes the love you never saw coming is the one that changes everything. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Every subscription helps bring more heartwarming, inspiring stories like this one to life. If you love tales of resilience, unexpected love, and the magic of second chances, you won't want to miss this. Now let's step into the world of Whitmore Farm and discover the journey of Izzy and Graham. The sun hung low over the Texas horizon, casting long shadows over the cracked asphalt road stretching through miles of golden farmland. Graham Beckett, his hands rough from years of labor, tightened his grip on the steering wheel of his old Ford F-150. Another long day at the repair shop had left him exhausted, but he was used to the grind. Life as a single father didn't allow much room for anything else. Beside him, his 8-year-old daughter Maeve hummed softly, her fingers tracing patterns on the dusty window. She had inherited her mother's auburn hair and big brown eyes, but her stubborn determination, that was all Graham. "Dad, why are we stopping?" Maeve's voice pulled him from his thoughts as he slowed down the truck. Up ahead, on the side of the road, a rusty old pickup sat at an awkward angle, its hood propped open. A woman stood beside it, waving one hand while brushing stray strands of golden blonde hair from her face with the other. Graham exhaled sharply. He didn't usually stop for stranded drivers, not because he didn't want to help, but because time was a luxury he didn't have. But something about the scene tugged at him. The way the woman's shoulders slumped slightly, the frustration in her expression, the old truck itself, its faded teal paint a relic from another era. "Dad, we have to help," Maeve insisted, already unbuckling her seatbelt. Graham sighed. "All right, kiddo, stay in the truck." He pulled over, stepping out onto the warm asphalt. The woman turned, relief flashing across her face. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe mid-30s, dressed in worn jeans and a white linen shirt. "Need a hand?" Graham asked, already eyeing the engine. "That would be an understatement," she admitted, exhaling sharply. "I think the alternator's shot, but I'm not exactly a mechanic." Graham chuckled despite himself. "Lucky for you, I am." She smiled, and for a moment the exhaustion in her deep blue eyes lifted. "I appreciate it. I'm Izzy, by the way." "Graham?" he replied, already rolling up his sleeves. The engine bay was a mess of rust and tangled wires. He worked in silence, methodical and efficient, while Izzy stood nearby, watching with interest. "So, do you do this often?" she asked after a while. "What? Rescue strangers on the side of the road?" Graham smirked. "Not usually, but my daughter insisted." Izzy leaned slightly to glance into the truck, where Maeve waved enthusiastically. "She's adorable," Izzy said warmly. "Yeah," Graham said, glancing over his shoulder at his daughter. "She's the best thing I've ever done." A comfortable silence settled between them as he worked. Izzy shifted her weight, then sighed. "I swear, This truck has a personality of its own. One minute it's fine, the next it's deciding I need an unscheduled roadside break. Graham glanced up. Why not get something newer? She hesitated. It belonged to my grandfather. He always said a truck like this wasn't just a machine, it had a soul. I guess I can't bring myself to let it go. There was something in her voice, something wistful, almost sad. Graham didn't press. Everyone had their own ghosts. After a few more minutes, he wiped his hands on a rag. It's a quick fix for now, but you'll need a new alternator soon. Izzy sighed in relief. Thank you, really? She patted the truck's hood. Looks like you've got the magic touch. Graham smirked. More like years of grease and busted knuckles. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a small wad of cash. Here, he shook his head. Not necessary. Izzy frowned. Come on, you just saved me from being stranded in the middle of nowhere. You're not in the middle of nowhere, Graham pointed out. Town's about 10 miles back. Okay, well, I was emotionally stranded, she countered, tilting her head playfully. Graham almost smiled, but caught himself. Call it a favor, just pay it forward. For a second, Izzy studied him, something unreadable in her expression. Then she tucked the money back into her pocket. All right, Graham, I'll pay it forward. Maeve suddenly leaned out of the truck window. Are you staying in town, Miss Izzy? Izzy turned to her. For now, I just moved into a little rental on the edge of town. Maeve beamed. Then you should come to my dad's garage. He fixes cars, but mostly old ones, and he makes the best sandwiches. Graham shook his head. Maeve, I might just take you up on that, Izzy said, grinning. She climbed into her truck, turned the key, and the engine rumbled to life. Graham took a step back, watching as she pulled onto the road. As the dust settled, Maeve turned to her father. She's nice, she said matter-of-factly. Graham sighed. Don't get any ideas, kiddo. But something about Izzy lingered in his mind longer than it should have, and as the old truck disappeared into the horizon, he had a feeling their paths would cross again. The scent of fresh coffee and warm cinnamon filled the air as Izzy Whitmore pushed open the wooden door of Carly's Diner, the small-town cafe she had stumbled upon the day before. The place had an old-fashioned charm. Checkered floors, red, vinyl booths, and a waitress who called everyone on. It was the kind of place that reminded her of childhood road trips with her grandfather, stopping in towns like this, where life moved at a slower, more deliberate pace. She liked that. Sliding onto a bar stool at the counter, she glanced at the menu, though she already knew she'd order coffee, strong and black. A warm, friendly voice broke her thoughts. Morning, sugar. Haven't seen you around before? Izzy looked up to see Carly Monroe, the diner's owner, setting down a steaming cup of coffee in front of her. She was a sturdy woman in her 60s, with short silver hair and a knowing smile, the kind of person who had probably seen it all in this town. Just moved in, Izzy replied, wrapping her hands around the cup. Izzy Whitmore. Carly raised a brow, recognition flickering across her face. Whitmore, huh? Any relation to Jasper Whitmore? Izzy hesitated for a split second before nodding. He's my grandfather. Carly's smile softened. Well, I'll be. I remember Jasper from back in the day. Hell of a man. That farm of his used to be the pride of this county. She paused. What brings you back? Not many folks return once they leave. Izzy forced a smile. Just needed a change of scenery. Carly didn't press, but the knowing look in her eyes suggested she wasn't fooled. That was the thing about small towns. Secrets didn't stay secret for long. As Izzy took a sip of her coffee, the bell over the door jingled, and in walked none other than Graham Beckett, with his daughter Maeve skipping alongside him. Izzy hadn't expected to see him so soon, but when Maeve spotted her, the little girl beamed and waved enthusiastically. Miss Izzy! Graham, looking like he had very much hoped to avoid this encounter, exhaled sharply before giving her a nod. Morning! "Morning," Izzy replied, fighting back a smile at how uncomfortable he seemed. Maeve hopped onto the stool beside her, all enthusiasm. "Are you staying in town for good? Daddy says people usually leave." "Maeve," Graham muttered. Izzy chuckled. "Well, I'm staying for now." She glanced at Graham. "And it looks like I'll be taking your daughter's recommendation. I might need a mechanic soon." Carly, having been listening with amusement, chimed in. "You won't find a better one than Graham. He can fix just about anything." "That's what I've heard." Izzy tilted her head. "I might swing by your shop later." Graham let out a non-committal grunt before focusing on ordering breakfast. But Maeve, undeterred, leaned in closer. "Did you know my dad makes the best sandwiches?" Izzy grinned. "You know, I think you mentioned that." Carly laughed. "Maeve here's Graham's best marketing tool. If he'd let her, she'd have half the town eating at his garage instead of my diner." "Not a bad idea," Izzy mused. "A mechanic shop with a built-in sandwich counter. You'd be the first in town." "Absolutely not," Graham muttered, shaking his head. Maeve sighed dramatically. "Daddy has no vision." Izzy laughed, enjoying this more than she probably should have. There was something refreshing about Graham's blunt nature. It was a sharp contrast to the world she had grown up in, where every conversation was a performance, every interaction a strategic move. He was real, and she wasn't sure if that was comforting or dangerous. Izzy arrived at Beckett's Auto Repair just after lunch. The shop was nothing fancy, just a large garage with a sign that had seen better days, but it had a charm to it. It was the kind of place built on hard work and trust, not flashy advertising. She found Graham under the hood of an old Chevy, his hands already covered in grease. When he noticed her standing there, he straightened and wiped his hands on a rag. "You actually came," he said, mildly surprised. "I said I would," Izzy replied. He studied her for a moment before gesturing toward the side of the garage. "Your truck still running?" "For now," she admitted. "But I figured I'd have you look it over before it decides to quit on me at the worst possible moment." Graham nodded, leading her to where her rusty pickup was parked. As he popped the hood, Izzy leaned against the fender, watching him work. "You know," she mused, "most mechanics would have taken the cash I offered yesterday." Graham didn't look up. "I don't take money for 5-minute fixes." "That's some kind of personal rule?" "Something like that." Izzy studied him, intrigued. "You don't talk much, do you?" Graham sighed. "Is there a point to this conversation, or are you just here to distract me while I work?" Izzy smirked. "A little of both." A ghost of a smile flickered across his face, but it was gone before she could be sure she'd actually seen it. After a few minutes, Graham stepped back. "Your truck's holding on for now, but it's not going to last forever. You should think about replacing it." Izzy ran a hand along the faded paint. "I know, but I can't just get rid of it." Graham glanced at her, something unreadable in his gaze. "Sentimental attachment?" "Something like that," she echoed his earlier words. For a moment, they stood in silence, the only sound the distant hum of a radio playing from inside the garage. Then Izzy straightened. "Well, thanks for the checkup. I guess I'll be seeing you around, Beckett." "Looks like it," he said. As she walked away, Graham found himself watching her go, a frown tugging at the corners of his lips. Izzy Whitmore was a mystery, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to solve it or keep his distance, but something told him he wouldn't have much of a choice. The afternoon sun cast a golden hue over the town as Izzy drove her rusty pickup down the winding country road leading to Whitmore Farm. The familiar scent of tilled earth and sun-baked hay seeped through her open window, carrying with it memories she hadn't invited. She hadn't set foot here in over a decade. As the house came into view, a sprawling 2-story farmhouse with peeling white paint and a wraparound porch, her hands tightened around the steering wheel. It looked smaller than she remembered, but maybe that was just time playing tricks on her. An old man sat in a rocking chair on the porch, watching as she pulled up. His piercing grey eyes, still sharp despite his age, met hers with a mixture of surprise and something else. Something she couldn't quite read. "Well, I'll be damned," Jasper Whitmore muttered. Izzy stepped out of the truck, forcing a casual smile. "Hey, Grandpa!" Jasper didn't move for a long moment. Then with a grunt, he pushed himself to his feet, his boots thudding against the wooden planks. He studied her as if trying to determine whether she was real or just a ghost from his past. "Didn't think I'd ever see you back here," he finally said, his voice rough with age and years of unspoken words. Izzy swallowed, suddenly feeling like the 16-year-old girl who had once stormed off this land, vowing never to return. "Yeah, well, life's funny that way." Jasper's gaze flicked to her truck. "Still driving that old thing, huh?" she smirked. "It's got character." He let out a short chuckle before motioning toward the house. "Well, you gonna stand out here all day, or are you coming inside?" Izzy hesitated. The last time she had been in that house, she had been screaming at her father, telling him she'd never let this place define her. But her father was gone now, and she was here. She followed. Jasper inside, the scent of aged wood and tobacco clung to the air, unchanged since she was a child. The furniture was the same, worn but sturdy, built to last like everything her grandfather believed in. Jasper shuffled toward the kitchen, pulling a bottle of whiskey from the cabinet. "You want some?" Izzy raised a brow. "It's barely past noon." Jasper poured himself a glass anyway. "You sound like your grandmother." Izzy smirked but didn't say anything. Instead, her gaze drifted to the framed photographs on the wall. Familiar faces stared back at her. Her parents, her younger self, and one of her father and Jasper standing in front of the farm, proud and unshakable. Jasper followed her gaze. "Your daddy never gave up on this place, you know." Izzy's chest tightened. "I know." He took a slow sip of his whiskey. "So what brought you back?" Izzy exhaled, leaning against the counter. "Honestly, I don't know. I was passing through, and something just pulled me here." Jasper grunted. "That's how it works. This land, it calls you home whether you like it or not." She crossed her arms. "I never wanted this life." Jasper nodded slowly. "Neither did your daddy. At first." Izzy looked at him, startled. Jasper smirked at her expression. "Thought he always wanted to be a farmer, didn't you?" He shook his head. "Nah, he had dreams of getting out too, but life has a way of showing you what really matters." Izzy swallowed the lump in her throat. She wasn't sure if she was ready to hear this. Jasper set his glass down with a thud. "Come on, let's take a walk." Jasper led her outside, toward the open fields that stretched endlessly under the afternoon sun. The wheat swayed gently, golden and alive, and in the distance, the old barn stood like a sentinel over the land. "This place is a damn mess," Jasper admitted, motioning toward the fence that was missing a few planks. "I ain't been able to keep up like I used to." Izzy frowned. "You don't have anyone helping you?" Jasper scoffed. "Most folks in this town think this farm's a lost cause, and I ain't exactly been in the best shape to prove 'em wrong." Izzy glanced at him then, really looking at him. He was still strong, but there was a weariness in his stance that hadn't been there before. Time had caught up with him. "You could sell it," she said carefully. Jasper stiffened. "That what you think I should do?" Izzy hesitated. "I don't know." Jasper turned to her, his gaze sharp. "Do you?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. Jasper sighed, rubbing a hand over his weathered face. "I had a buyer come through last month, some city boy named Holt. Says he wants to turn this place into some kind of resort. Thinks I'm too stubborn to take the money." Izzy's stomach twisted. "Daniel Holt?" Jasper shot her a look. "You know him?" Izzy clenched her jaw. Of course it was Holt. He had been circling prime farmland across the state, turning old homesteads into luxury developments. She had seen his work firsthand. And if he was after Whitmore Farm... "Yeah," she said quietly. "I know him." Jasper studied her. And Izzy inhaled deeply, the weight of a decision she wasn't ready to make settling on her shoulders. "And I think you should hold off on selling," Jasper smirked. "That so?" She nodded, her gaze drifting over the land she had once wanted nothing to do with. But maybe Graham was right. Some things were worth fixing, and maybe, just maybe, she wasn't ready to let go of this place after all. The late afternoon sun hung heavy over Whitmore Farm, casting long shadows across the land as Izzy drove her rusty pickup back toward town. The engine hummed steadily beneath her, but her mind was anything but calm. The conversation with her grandfather had unsettled her. She had expected hostility, or at least a cold distance, but instead, Jasper had greeted her like she had only been gone for a few months, not 12 years. And then there was Daniel Holt. The fact that he was circling her family's land made her stomach tighten with unease. She had seen what he did to places like this, turning history into profit, bulldozing legacies to make way for luxury. And yet, what claim did she have over this land anymore? She had left, after all. As she turned onto Main Street, she spotted Beckett's Auto Repair, and almost without thinking, she pulled into the gravel lot. Graham Beckett was hunched under the hood of a battered old Ford when Izzy stepped into the garage. The scent of motor oil and hot metal filled the air, mixing with the distant sound of country music playing from a radio in the corner. "Tell me you're not back already because your truck finally gave up on life," Graham muttered, not looking up. Izzy smirked. "Still running, but I figured you'd want to take another look. You seemed awfully invested in its survival yesterday." Graham straightened, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. "I wouldn't say invested. More like concerned that one day I'll find you stranded in the middle of nowhere. Touching," she mused, crossing her arms. "I had no idea you cared so much about my well-being." He shot her a flat look. "I don't. I just don't like seeing good vehicles suffer." Izzy chuckled but didn't push further. Instead, she leaned against a nearby tool bench, letting the silence settle between them. Graham finally sighed. "You look like you've got something on your mind." She hesitated, then exhaled. "I went to see my grandfather today." That made Graham pause. He tossed the rag onto the workbench and leaned against the truck, arms crossing over his chest. "And how'd that go?" Izzy shrugged, trying to sound casual. "Better than expected. He didn't throw me off the porch, so I guess that's progress." Graham smirked. "Low bar." "Very," she admitted. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The garage door was open, allowing the warm evening breeze to drift in, carrying with it the faint scent of hay from the surrounding fields. Then Izzy broke the silence. "Do you know a guy named Daniel Holt?" Graham's expression darkened slightly. "Yeah, I know him. Runs some real estate development firm out of Austin. Spends a lot of time poking around these parts, looking for land to buy up. He made an offer on my grandfather's farm." Graham frowned. "And what does Jasper think?" Izzy let out a slow breath. "He didn't say much, but I can tell he's thinking about it. The place is falling apart, Graham, and he's getting old. I don't know if he has it in him to keep fighting for it." Graham studied her for a moment before speaking. "And what do you think?" Izzy hesitated. "I think," she sighed. "I don't know. I left that place a long time ago. I never thought I'd care what happened to it." "But you do." It wasn't a question. Izzy met his gaze, something unspoken passing between them. "Yeah," she admitted quietly. "I do." Graham nodded, his expression unreadable. "Then maybe it's time you figure out what that means." As Izzy left the garage, she decided to walk instead of drive. The town was quiet in the early evening, the setting sun bathing the buildings in a warm glow. She passed Carly's Diner, where a handful of regulars were gathered outside, sipping iced tea and exchanging the kind of small-town gossip that never truly died. She was about to turn down the street leading to her rental house when a voice called out, "Isadora Whitmore." Izzy stiffened at the sound of her full name. She turned to see a tall, well-dressed man leaning against a sleek black BMW.